Hi there everybody and welcome to this new video of Learn with Vito. I am Vito and today we're gonna continue our Maya beginner crash course and I'm so excited about it. If you haven't watched the first video, well, go on and do so. You should find it upside here. My webcam is mirrored and it's driving me crazy because I don't really know which arm should I raise. It's really important and fundamental for you to watch that video if you haven't yet, because we talked about really important things such as how to create a geometric primitive and how to transform them into the viewport. This is the viewport. I will give everything for granted while explaining new things in this video. So in this video, what I want to focus on is how to transform geometric primitives and how to use the channel box layer editor and a couple of other things. I am trying to keep everything as short as possible because there is a lot going on there and I don't want you to be confused. You just go with your own pace and so on and so forth. So the first thing I want to do is to create a cube because we love cubes, isn't it? And as you may have noticed, I've installed this plugin here that will show you which key I'm pressing while explaining new things, and I've also moved the webcam up there just to show how reflectivity there is on my head. How reflectivity is on my head? I'm not sure. Anyway, I've created a cube. How have I created a cube? Well, I'm on the poly modeling shelf. I'm focusing on those 7 icons here. I have the sphere, cube, cylinder, so on and so forth. I clicked on the cube and a cube has been created at the origin of my axis. How do I know this is the origin? Because there are 2 bold lines that are crossing my grid, and at the center of those 2 bold axes we find the origin of our axis. Don't really rely on those numbers here. You may think that because the cube is zeroed out, the positions of the cube are zeroed out, well, it should be at the origin of our axis. This is not always true. We will talk about it later on in the course, but for the moment, just if it's at the center of those bold axes, it is at the origin. Anyway, there are multiple ways to transform things inside the viewport. So as we've seen in the first video, we can drag things around just by pressing on an axis and move it. We can, translate onto the x-axis. If you recall, we have the world axis representation down in the down left corner here. So if I click onto the x-axis, that's becoming yellow. I drag and the translate X is updating. If I click on the Z axis, blue, the Z axis is updating, and so on and so forth. So you may have tried it already, but we can also update those transformations right inside the channel box layer editor. So how to do it? We can just click on this text box, and as soon as we click, the text box gets highlighted and we can change the number inside. So I can just press 0, press enter, and the cube will be moved to the X0 position. If I want to zero it out also onto the Z axis, I can just zero it out and that's it. What if I want to scale everything, by 2 units? So I could go on, press R, because this is the shortcut of our scale tool. If you don't remember shortcuts, it's not a problem. You can just over the scale tool, and Maya will be so gentle to show you the shortcut with a brief explanation of what the tool does. So I might go on and, scale it using the center handle, and it will scale everything onto all the axes, so it will keep the ratio. But what if I want, just a really precise number? I want everything to be scaled 5 points. So I can go on, click on one of the scale attributes, keeping my shift button pressed, I can click all the scale attributes, or also other attributes that are not the scale attributes. And then once I have clicked, it's glitching, just give me a second. Okay, once I've clicked those, keeping my shift button click, and I insert a number, I inserted 3, I press enter, all 3 arguments that I have selected will be updated. So now our cube is a 3 units cube on all the axes, so X, Y, Z. The same applies for the rotation. So if I want to rotate everything 90 degrees, I can just do it. As you can see, the gizmo is updated. We didn't really notice any change into our cube because the cube is If it rotates 90 degrees, it would just look like a cube. But if we rotate it 45 degrees, for example, you notice that the cube is now rotated 45 degrees. And this is awesome. And we can do the same by going to the negative axis. So we can just write, I don't know, I want the cube to be at y minus 5. Minus 5, and go down. Minus 5 on the y-axis, and if I want the x to be minus 10, I can do the same and go 10 units to the left, because minus is just the opposite of the representation here of the x-axis. This is pointing the positive direction of the x-axis. Same applies for the y and same applies for the z. So now let me zero out everything. And why is it important? As you can see now, I've zeroed out everything with no effort at all. I just selected everything, keeping shift pressed. I click 0, enter, that's it. And let me bring the scales to 1 back again. So now we have our cube at the origin of our axis, like just being created. Okay, and I want to stack 2 cubes, or one on top of the other. So I can create a new cube, and now the cube has been created right inside the old cube, and I can move it. So I can press W, and oh, I'm sorry, this is the formation handler. We will see it later on. So I can move it and try to stack it on top of the cube. So now this is not the best way to do it. The best way to do so is that just because we know this is 1 unit cube, we can move it 1 unit up, and this will be stacked on top of the other cube. And if we want to be sure, if we want to see where a cube ends and where a cube starts, so we want to see the separation between those cubes, we can see a thing that is called the wireframe. So the wireframe is the visual representation of our edges. So a geometry is composed by edges, a geometry is composed by vertices and faces. So those are the 3 main components of a common geometry. So what we can do is to display the wireframe of our cubes. How to do so? I want to introduce you a new menu. So now we have seen the channel box layer editor, but here, right down the shelf poly modeling, you can see there are lots of buttons here. Just ignore all of them and focus on this one. Okay, this one, if you over it, it says wireframe unshaded. It means it will show you the wireframes of the geometry as well as the shader. I won't go too deep into what a shader is during this lesson. It's not really the purpose of the lesson. But what I want you to know is that if I click onto wireframe unshaded and I deselect this cube, as you can see now, we have those blue lines that are just displaying our edges. So when I select a cube, the edges are highlighted in green. But when I don't select anything and I don't have the wireframe unshaded activated, well, I won't see anything. But if I select it, well, now we can see that one cube starts here and the other one ends here, and so on. If I move them or I want to intercept them, I can see that the cube now is actually intercepting the other one. If I deactivate this function, I won't see anything unless I select both of them. By the way, if you want to select multiple objects, you can just using or with the move tool selected. This is not a problem at all, but for consistency's sake, just use the selection tool. You can click and drag onto the viewport and it will select all the items that are inside the perimeter of your selection box. Okay, so let's reactivate our wireframe unshaded. And actually there is another way for us to show wireframe of our geometry. So let me bring it back to 1 so that they're stuck on top of each other. Let me turn off the wireframe unshaded and let me turn on the wireframe mode. So as you can see now, we cannot see our faces anymore. We just are left with the edges. So this is, if you over it, wireframe. Wireframe will only show the wireframe of the geometry. When if we over the smooth shade, also the second button here that is the default selected, we can see we have only the shaded model. the shaded geometry, so no vertices, no edges are shown, only the shaded with its shadows and so on and so forth. And also we can click on wireframe on shaded, and we'll have both, the best of both worlds. So we have our cube that has shadows and gray faces, as well as the wireframe visible. So now we know how to move things around. We know how to parametrically move things around with more precision. And we know also how to display our wireframe to better understand how our geometries are relationing between each other, how they're intercepting between each other, and so on. If there is an issue, you can see it from here. So this is very, very important. Remember, you can go here, wireframe on shaded, shaded, and wireframe. So wireframe and shaded, shaded, and only wireframe. That's it. This is the channel box, layer editor. You can transform things here using values, whichever value you want. It's much more precise than moving them around using just the axis. Or better, you can start by using the axis, but then you want to move to the channel box editor just to, keep things really much more precise, and that's it. So I really hope this video has been helpful for you. In the next video, we will talk about how to transform vertices, faces, and edges to change the shape of our geometric primitives. And if you have any questions, just drop me a message in the comments. If you like the video, leave a like, subscribe, and follow me on Twitter. Why not? See you in the next video.